We all deal with data, budgets, expenses, everyday numbers, but most people still guess what they actually mean. I'm a qualified accountant with 13 years at EY, PwC, and now Amazon. And the one thing I have learned is that top analysts are not the best in Excel or Power BI, but they ask good questions. Every week you try and master these old tools, you waste hours, potentially losing money and risk falling behind because every critical decision hinges on data and fast decision making. So in this video, I'll teach you the beginner-friendly 4-step lazy analyst method, which includes load, ask, filter, and frame. So you can master fundamental analysis in plain English with ChatGPT and Claude AI handling the heavy lifting. Let's start with the biggest headache in data analysis, cleaning up messy information. I've got a synthetic expense report here with 200 transactions. And to make it more complicated, I've got transactions data split across two separate files. One has the amounts and spend categories and the other has merchant names and locations. I've also packaged these datasets into a Google Drive so you can download them and start practicing with me along the video. Hit pause where you need to look at something again, but I recommend to really learn this, you download this dataset and practice with me. Let's load and audit the data quality for the first file. I'm going to load the expenses file and ask ChatGPT to explain the dataset in one line and review the data quality and consistency. And immediately, because it's a CSV file, ChatGPT gives me a transactional view of the dataset as well. And I can clearly see the spend categories have some spelling mistakes, but the rest looks okay. So I'm going to see now what it says in the analysis below. And it says the transaction IDs are fully populated for everything. The dates are populated, no issues. And it spotted the inconsistent spelling, which I just mentioned around the different categories. All the amounts are there. And then in the payment method, it's saying there are only 3 unique values, check for casing spelling. And now it's giving me some recommendations. So for example, you can standardize the category, grocery and transport using appropriate correct names. Now, given the categories of expense spend have spelling mistakes, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to correct the entries and generate an updated CAV. And as you can see, it's going through all the error corrections. So it maps grocery to groceries, billing to bills, and transport with the 3 T's to transport. So it looks like it's got the categories correct. And then it's generated the updated file, which I can just download and start using with the correct categories. Now you've got clean data, but here's where most people get stuck again, actually finding the right insights. This normally means making pivot tables, formulas, and hours of Excel work. To understand the spending patterns in Excel, you'd create pivot tables, set up categories, build charts, format everything, another 1 to 2 hours minimum. And if you want to ask a follow-up question, you'll have to start over again. Now, instead of doing all that, just do this. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, what are my top 3 spending categories and which merchants do I use the most? But hang on, before I ask this, the merchant information is in a separate file, which I mentioned at the start of the video. So I'm now going to upload the first file and the second and ask ChatGPT to merge both datasets, telling it that the common identifier between the both files is the transaction ID, and then ask it to generate the merged CSV file. And it starts going through merging the datasets. And here we have a successfully merged file with all the transaction data. And if I click download and open the file, I can clearly see now that I have my first file, but it's now got all the transactions mapped to the merchant name, the city, and the customer type. And that is great because I didn't have to do VLOOKUPs against each of them one by one, trying to make sure if it's copied the transactions correct or not. This is quick. Now that I have got my merged data, let's ask ChatGPT to analyze what are my top 3 spending categories and which merchants do I use the most. And there we have it. So our top 3 spending categories are groceries, bills, and dining. And the top merchants by number of transactions, Amazon, Uber Eats, Shell, and Tesco is groceries, and then Netflix. Don't know why there are 28 transactions for Netflix, but again, this was synthetic data. And now I want to dig deeper. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT, how much do I spend on weekdays versus weekends? All right, so weekday spend is 38,000 versus weekend spend 14,000, and that means it's 2.7x more during the weekdays, which kind of makes sense. If you have a full-time job, you're probably traveling, you're having food outside, you're taking a transport, for example, or fuel costs. But this just happened in seconds. Imagine doing that on your own in Excel. I mean, no one would even think about doing this. Now, here's where it gets more powerful. Professional dashboard tools like Power BI and Tableau cost in terms of subscription and also have a huge steep learning curve in order for you to set up visualizations. This includes visual charts so you can understand your data in a better way. Now for interactive dashboard and chart creations, I recommend using Claude, which handles this better than ChatGPT. So for this step, we are going to switch tools to Claude. So I'm going to go on Claude and I'm going to upload all the merged data. And I'm going to ask create an interactive, and I'm going to click enter and put Claude to work. Now Claude, what it does is it will start writing code and will make an interactive artifact. Now fast forward, I have the dashboard ready. It allows me to filter my spend based on the key categories, the payment methods, and all the different type of customers we have. So going down, the total spend was $53,000. Average transaction was $265. It's put the spend by category. It allows me to look at payment methods and is also giving me a month level monthly spending trend. So it looks like May was an outlier. All of this was done within 5 minutes. And if you want to share these insights with a business partner, or let's say for your personal expenses, you want to share the analysis with your partner, you can just hit publish here. And what it will do is it will make a website of your dashboard and you can give that link to anyone and they can sort of look at the same dashboard. Imagine doing that for any analysis you have at work or a business proposal where you can just present an interactive dashboard. Now dashboards are great, but here is another important tip to catch expensive mistakes. We are going back to ChatGPT now and I'm going to ask, are there any suspicious transactions? Look for new vendors, odd location, or significant amounts for the category. And we have the results. So there are no unusually large amounts, no unusual vendors or cities which were rarely visited. And that's just one way of asking it. You can ask the questions in many different ways to try and find anomalies. Now this is a very powerful hack because without even knowing your data set deeply, you can use ChatGPT to find out what's wrong. Now the final step, framing, is what separates good analysis from great decision making. Most analysis ends with pretty charts and no clear next steps or decisions. You know your platforms what you should actually do with that data. What story is your data telling you? Which opportunity should you pursue first? What should you cut from your costs? Where should you actually focus? I'm going to ask ChatGPT that based on this data set, what are the 3 specific changes I should make to save $500 a month? So it has come back with recommendations. So the first one is to say, cut my grocery spend by 15 to 20%. That will give me $2,500 or dollars or pounds of saving. And the strategy to do that is to buy in bulk, switch to budget stores and avoid daily shopping because that's the trend it's seeing in my data. Reduce dining expenses by 20% by cooking more at home, reducing delivery frequency. Example, Uber Eats shows 43 transactions. That's a great strategy because it's tailored to my data. You can do the same for reports at work. Ask it to present the data to leadership or format insights for meetings in a meaningful way. Now that you've seen how to use ChatGPT and Claude to turn raw data into confident decisions, what if you could instantly turn those insights into stunning slides and presentations without ever having to open PowerPoint? Or take an interesting data and make an insightful social media post to share with your audience. And if you want to learn how to do that, you might like this video where I talk about Gamma AI and show you how to create powerful presentations and social media content in minutes.